continues. So it's Friday, 8 December 2017 and I'm Anis Rana. Let's look at what's coming up today.
Baik, peningkatan kos sara hidup semakin
Now,
membelenggu
meanwhile, Angola's
kebelanjaan
economy
harian
is struggling to
rakyat.
cope following the global plunge in oil prices.
Dunia yang
And the national
semakin
currency, the kwanza, has lost more than
dibatasi.
50% of its value over the last 2 years, sending the cost of imports through the roof. The situation is causing concern about the future of
The highlight of today is what are the government incentives to reduce the high living costs. We will see further, does the public transportation reduce the cost of living in Malaysia? Apart from that, the introduction of Card Siswa One Malaysia, is that helpful for students? Another way, Kedai Rakyat One Malaysia, how it can cope with the cost of living together with the effectiveness of BRIM towards consumer. Malaysians are reportedly leaving the cities and moving back to rural towns as the rising cost of living makes it difficult to survive in urban centers. Although the trend had once been the opposite, as in today said, cities have been hit by an exodus largely due to the spike in property prices. For those who were in the cities but are unable to afford the cost of living there, commuting from smaller towns on the outskirts has become a viable option thanks to infrastructural development such as the construction of highways and better internet access. Meanwhile, the report said job opportunities in rural areas were also increasing, especially in the tourism and agriculture sectors. It said the population shift from city to countryside would see an accompanying shift in investment, with money trickling down even to the more rural areas. In Malaysia, from 2015 to 2016 alone, the price of buying a house rose by 7.2%, more than the rate in developed economies such as the UK and US, where prices increased by 5.1% and 5.2%. Over the last 10 years, the cost of buying a house has increased by 99%, far beyond the means of most of the younger generation. With transport costs also increasing, this young and growing segment of property seekers are looking for a property in the cities, often close to their workplace. Malaysia has relatively young population and workforce, and these young people are having a hard time to cope with the higher living costs. Let us look further what are the government incentives to reduce the high cost of living in Malaysia. So I will pass to our reporter for the next segment.
Thank you, Anis from studio. Lately, we can see the price of fuel didn't fix and fluctuate every day. The price is either increase or decrease. This matter make people worry because fuel is commonly used by almost every sector in the economy. Consumers will feel the biggest brunt of petrol price hike, even some of them didn't drive. Is it the development of LRT, MRT, and public transport such as Rapid KL helps people to deal with their higher living costs? That we ask people.
Negara Malaysia mungkin dari segi pengurangan kos hidup itu adalah dari segi pengangkutan. Kemudian LRT ini maksudnya bila kita nak bergerak tu parking, kalau yang berdekatan dekat sini itu dia jalan kaki. Jadi secara tak langsung kos parking tu dah selesai lah kepada yang mana. Dan kemudian dari segi kos sebab MRT ni dia ada banyak stesen. Jadi kalau kita nak pergi ke mana lebih mudah lah menggunakan LRT dari MRT lah. Sebab MRT dengan LRT ni jadual dia kita dah tahu lah. Ada tempat yang mudah untuk kita merancang perjalanan.
The Mass Rapid Transit MRT transportation system isn't just friendly for the government, but is also capable of reducing the cost of living for Klang Valley folk. According to Domestic Trade, Cooperatives and Consumerism KPD and KK Minister Datuk Seri Hassan Zainuddin, he said the 51-kilometer long Sungai Buloh Kacang SPK line, which first started limited operations in December last year before being fully opened to the public last month, had been proven to have reduced people's transportation costs. Hamzah said that he had the opportunity to meet with some MRT users and most of them gave positive feedback on the service. The service is also expected to reduce traffic in the Klang Valley. Last month, MRT Corp said that it projected that there would be 160,000 fewer vehicles entering KL daily with the SPK line up and running, based on an estimation of 400,000 MRT riders per day. Students of higher learning institutions can now apply for a concession card that entitles them to a 50% discount on all rail and bus rides, said Higher Education Minister Datuk Seri Idris Yusof on last November. Students can apply for the concession card at the Central Market Central Bus Station for the price of RM15 to enjoy all public transport facilities managed by Prasarana Sundaram Berhad.
How often you use public transport and why you choose it instead of driving?
I use public transport quite frequent because I always go home. I didn't drive because it costs a lot of money for the fuel. Yeah, that's it.
How does the public transport helps you to deal with the high living costs?
Because since I use this rapid card, it gives me 50% discount, which my expenditure for the transportation will be cut by half, and the other half I can save it.
So that we can see there are many positive effects from citizens. Public transport help people by charging low fare, especially for students. Students will get low fare, which is 15% discount for the actual price. Other committees such as officers, government workers also get benefit by foregoing their costs from toll and fuel by driving cars. That's all from me. Come back to the studio.
Thank you, Shahida Ashiki from LRT Gombak. As we know that nowadays, transportation is becoming the basic necessities for us. Without transportation, we cannot go working or traveling. So people are aware that the fuel price keeps increasing, and by using public transportation, they can reduce their daily consumption on transportation. Another initiative is by using card debit discount One Malaysia. So I will pass to the reporter on duty to know more about it.
For the past few years, students in tertiary education have been receiving Bantuan Buku Satu Malaysia as the government aims to reduce the burden of academic book costs. However, starting from 16 of February 2017, Kad Debit Discount Siswa Satu Malaysia will be replacing Bantuan Buku Satu Malaysia scheme. The eligible students will receive RM250 assistance through a bank account instead of receiving them in the form of vouchers. The RM250 assistance will be debited directly into a Bank Rakyat account, and the students will obtain a card known as Kad Debit Discount Siswa Satu Malaysia from the bank. In addition to the RM250 assistance, the students will also get discount when using Kad Debit Discount Siswa Satu Malaysia to buy goods and services subject to the conditions set by the participating companies and merchants.
For an instance, the students can get discounts from bookstores such as MPH and Popular. Besides books, the students can also get a discount on stationeries and many other things. Kad Debit Discount Siswa Satu Malaysia functions like any other debit cards. It can be used for the students to buy their needs in selected supermarkets such as Giant and Tesco.
In order to receive this assistance, the student have to fulfill the following criteria.
The first criteria is Malaysian. Only Malaysian students can apply and get this assistance from the government. The students that are studying overseas are not applicable for this assistance. The students that are applicable for this assistance must also come from groups of active students studying at public or private institutions as at 31st December 2016. The third criteria is the students must be part-time or full-time students. In other words, only students are applicable for this assistance. Other people like doctors or lecturers are not applicable for this assistance. In addition to that, the students must also not a recipient of Bantuan Rakyat Satu Malaysia, or widely known as BRIM, because they had already received another assistance from the government. Lastly, the students must be in Malaysia during the implementation of Kad Debit Diskaun Siswa Satu Malaysia program to prevent anything bad from happening. If you are eligible for this assistance, the first thing you need to do is to visit the official page of Bank Rakyat and fill in the online application form. After that, you will receive a notice at the end of the application as your registration was successful. Don't forget to check your email regularly because you will receive an email from Bank Rakyat as to when your card is ready to be collected. Some documents are needed when you want to take your card, so don't forget to bring the required documents. To measure the effectiveness of this initiative took by the government, we conducted a survey on 30 students of IIUM, where 17 of them are females and 13 of them are males, with the age range from 17 to 30 years old. Most of them acknowledged about Kad Debit Diskaun Siswa Satu Malaysia, and 22 respondents said that it helps in dealing with higher living costs, while the remaining 8 respondents said that it doesn't help much in dealing with higher living costs. We asked the opinions of the people on Kad Debit Diskaun Siswa Satu Malaysia as an initiative took by the government to deal with higher living costs, and most of them gave positive feedbacks. Referring to the opinions given by them, some of them said that Kad Debit Diskaun Siswa Satu Malaysia only covers a part of their expenses, as the prices of things are increased from day to day are far greater than the amount of money provided by the government. Despite all that, we can still conclude that Kad Debit Diskaun Siswa Satu Malaysia is an initiative took by the government to deal with high living costs, even though some of them gave negative feedbacks. I'm Nur Alia Tira binti Zulkifli, reporting from HLC News.
Thank you, Alia Atira. We are aware that Kad Diskaun Siswa One Malaysia is basically for students, so it might not be very helpful for the other people. For those who are working, they don't get the same benefit as students. It is not be much helpful for them, so we also have Bantuan Rakyat One Malaysia, or BRIM, to help people with the lower income background in dealing with their high cost of living.
Thank you, Anissa Studio. Nowadays, there are many complaints about the cost of living that constantly rising in Malaysia. Therefore, government need to overcome this issue in the best way. One of the incentive that can be enjoyed by people is Bantuan Rakyat Satu Malaysia. To know more about BRIM, let's just hear the explanation that will be delivered by Dr. Muhammad Nizam Bebarom, Associate Professor in Kuliah of Economics IIU.
Okay, so BRIM is Bantuan Rakyat Satu Malaysia. It's a kind of public transfer implemented by the government to achieve a particular objective. So if we look at the history of BRIM, initially the government suffered a lot of financial burden in providing blanket subsidies, particularly subsidy on petrol. In the past, government provide huge subsidies on petrol, and this burden become too much at one point when the price of crude oil at the global market reached about $180 per barrel. So because of the huge difference between the subsidized rate of petrol domestically and the price of crude oil in the international market, at one point the government had to come up with about close to 40 billion ringgit just to subsidize petrol prices. On top of that, the government also subsidized a number of other basic necessity items such as sugar, flour, cooking oil. So these also have added to the financial burden in terms of the subsidy that the government needs to pay every year. So and when we look at the impact of this blanket subsidy, it is regressive in nature. It means that the subsidy is not properly targeted to its target group, focus group, which is the poor. Yeah? Normally you subsidize the poor, you don't subsidize the rich. Yeah? But when you look at fuel subsidy, subsidy on petroleum, for example, the ones who are benefiting will be the ones who are using cars or have more than one cars or using high capacity cars. Yeah? So, and less for those people who are relatively poorer. So as a result of that, this petroleum subsidy, which cost the government at that time about 30 to 40 billion to maintain, benefited more to the middle income and the top income earners in Malaysia. And on top of that as well, because of this increasing fuel subsidy, the government cannot spend that money to other purposes, development as well as operational aspect of the government's machinery. So as a result of that, they decided to come up with the subsidy rationalization, reduce subsidy on petroleum and as well as other items I've mentioned earlier, sugar, flour, cooking oil and so on. And this has been implemented gradually, so that the government is able to reduce the amount of subsidy and let the market adjust with the new price, not a sudden movement in the price of this item after the subsidy has been gradually reduced. So in order to somehow compensate the impact of these higher prices of subsidized items to the poor, so the government introduced this BRIM. So BRIM is basically to help the bottom 40% of the population in order to cope with the increase in prices for the items that the government has taken away some of the subsidies. So this is the initial objective of the government at that time. And secondly, there's also the inflation rate. The official rate of inflation in Malaysia is about 3-4%. But those are for the average price level for maybe 300-400 items in the consumer price index. But if we look at one segment of that consumer goods that we normally purchase, which is food prices has basically increased by more than 30%. So that's why the poor household particularly, feel the pain in terms of the higher cost of living, particularly in the context of food and drinks, where they need to buy at a daily basis. So BRIM from time to time has been increased in its amount in order to somehow provide additional supplementary income to the bottom 40%. And then the government introduced GST, the third issue. So the first issue was the removal of the subsidy. The second issue was the increasing cost of living. And the third issue is the introduction of GST. And when you introduce GST, it is a wide-based tax on consumption, which not only affect the rich but also the poor as well. So as a result of that, BRIM, to my opinion, is needed in order to compensate for the higher prices that the poor has to pay. So it is even better for the government if they are able to highlight how much the B40 has to pay in terms of GST. Let's say on average a poor household will buy goods and services in the market, right? And every time they buy certain goods and services, they will be imposed GST. So by right, these people should not be paying taxes to the government because these are poor households. But then, because of the implementation of GST, which is wide-based in nature, they have to pay. But then BRIM should compensate or neutralize what they have paid. Let's say an average household pay about 500, 600 amount of GST in a year. In a year, or maybe more, I do not know. So the government needs to pay back this amount to the poor, and on top of that, plus some additional amount as a supplementary assistance for the increasing cost of living in Malaysia. So those are some of the important points that I want to highlight related to BRIM. And this is also done in many other countries as well. At the initial stage, many people criticized BRIM because at that time BRIM was given once, one time. So that can create a shock in the market, which can trigger an increase in the price level. But now, given that the amount has been increased and the payment has been in stages, so I think everyone would agree that this is something that the government needs to do, because the government has the responsibility to assist the B40, the poor household in Malaysia, not only in terms of the higher cost of living, but also to neutralize the impact of subsidy rationalization that they have taken away in terms of petrol prices, sugar, flour, cooking oil, as well as GST that they have imposed. Because all of these three has compounded the impact on the bottom 40% of our Malaysian population.
So from the explanation, we know that BRIM can help to reduce the burden among the people. So that's all from me. I'm Soleha, reported from International Islamic University, Malaysia.
Thank you, Soleha. BRIM is basically are given to those with lower income. So how about people from middle income group? Or a person who has moderate salary but the cost of living in the city is higher compared from those who are living in the rural areas. Other government incentive is by introducing the clinic One Malaysia or Kedai Rakyat One Malaysia. This will help not only the certain group of people but also public and society. Next, I will pass to Muhammad for more information.
Hi, I'm Faik Muhammad from HLC News. Right now I'm in front of the clinic One Malaysia. As you can see, this clinic is well equipped and clean. The purpose of the clinic is to offer fast treatment and cheaper to the consumer. You only required to pay RM RM1 to get treatment from this clinic. Opposite to the private clinic up there, which the cost is definitely higher than this clinic and will burden low-income people. So this clinic is a good government initiative to ease consumer burden.
Clinic One Malaysia is a screened project launched by our Prime Minister Datuk Seri Najib Tun Razak. The healthcare initiative coincides with One Malaysia ideas of People's First Performance Now with the location of 50 clinics nationwide with budget of RM10 million. There are now over 33 clinics nationwide. For Malaysian, the fees is only RM1 to get check-up and treatment. The clinic is monitored by Health Department to ensure that all facilities and supply is sufficient.
Okey, untuk bantu rakyat dari segi kos tu memang dia murah lah. Okey, dari segi perubatan pun okey, tak ada masalah. Semua macam rasanya di mana yang UTC ni dia boleh bantu rakyat-rakyat yang berdekatan untuk datang sini. Nah, ini refer pada UTC pula. So dari segi servis diorang setakat ni akak datang alhamdulillah. Walaupun saya difahamkan diorang ada limited resources, tapi diorang cuba yang terbaik lah untuk serve patient. Dan agak difahamkan pada yang datang sini pun kadang diorang datang tak ke masa lah, ada waktu rehat apa semua kan. So I think at all dari segi untuk apa langkah kerajaan untuk mewujudkan UTC untuk bantu rakyat ni satu langkah yang betul-betul bijak lah.
pendapat Kak tentang klinik?
Jadi klinik ni dari segi Malaysia dari segi apa? Servis ke macam mana?
Dari servis ke, dia punya kos.
Okay, dari segi kos RM1 sangat membantu. Okay, so macam segi kos living sekarang yang semakin meningkat rate saya, dan ini adalah satu langkah kerajaan yang bijak lah untuk bantu rakyat-rakyat yang berpendapatan rendah, yang hidup di tengah bandar ni. So mewujudkan UTC buku ni di tengah bandar ni satu langkah yang bijak lah untuk bantu rakyat yang berpendapatan rendah untuk terima servis seperti klinik biasa yang ada di sini.
I am Muhammad, reporting from UTC Kramat. I will pass to Fayad at Kedai Rakyat 1 Malaysia. Thank you, Muhammad. Hi, I am Fayad. So here with me today, we will visit one of the government initiatives to ease consumer burden, which is Kedai Rakyat 1 Malaysia. Here we are at Kedai Rakyat 1 Malaysia, located at Kudu Central. The purpose of this shop is to help people bought daily groceries at a cheaper price. Here in the Kedai Rakyat 1 Malaysia, there are 280 items up to 40% discounts. So as you can see, all items is priced cheaper compared to other grocery shop. So low income people can afford to purchase daily food in this current economic condition. Also, this shop help to ease consumer burden.
Kedai Rakyat 1 Malaysia was launched in 2011 as government initiative to mitigate rising cost of living. Cream receives government allocation to ensure that goods sold were affordable. But recently, Cream is grown as part of upgrading process through Cream 2.0 to offer essential items at cheaper price with more choice to customers. Ministry is engaging with more than 10 companies to assess the capability to operate Cream 2.0. This is to ensure that Cream 2.0 will be better and cheaper.
I am Fayad, working from Kudu Central.
So, basically, we know that the government incentive is by having a public transportation, giving out free introduction of Clinic 1 Malaysia and Kedai Rakyat 1 Malaysia can reduce our burden and reduce the cost of living in so many aspects. So, that's all for today. I'm Anis Raya, reported from
HLC News.